I'm Robert LeBoyer, Senior Biotechnology Analyst at Noble Capital. With us here today is Dr. Shalabh Gupta, the CEO of Unicycive, who will tell us about its phosphate-binding drug, OLC, which has an NDA filed with the FDA and is currently under review. He'll also mention UNI-494, a mitochondrial injury drug in development. Dr. Gupta, please take it away.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, Noble Capital, for hosting me. Thanks for all the audience who are joining this presentation. My name is Shalabh Gupta. I'm founder, CEO of the company. I'll walk you through the presentation, and as Robert mentioned, I'll focus most of my presentation on our lead drug, which is oxylanthanum carbonate, and mention about our second drug in passing. With that, these are forward-looking statements that I'll encourage you to read before making any investment decision. So what is the thesis to take a look at Unicycive? We are a kidney-focused biotechnology company that have two clinical stage programs. Our most advanced program is oxylanthanum carbonate, which is under review by the FDA with potential approval date for mid next year. We have a small but mighty team that has been there, done that before, more specifically around this program and also through the regulatory and development programs in the past. And we have a second drug, which is UNI-494, which is currently in development for acute kidney injury. Our plan is to meet with the FDA next year and discuss with them for a regulatory path moving forward in the US. UNI-494 has finished phase 1 clinical trial in the United Kingdom, and we'll provide more update in the coming months. So I'm going to start with the overall market opportunity. What is the big unmet need? Treatment of hyperphosphatemia is indicated in patients who are on dialysis. Dialysis is the last stage of chronic kidney disease. By way of background, currently in the US, roughly 37 million patients suffer from chronic kidney disease. Chronic kidney disease is a progressively worsening disease in which kidneys are the last part of the body or the filtering part of the body which get affected by a variety of other problems. So for example, if a patient is suffering from heart problem like high blood pressure, coronary artery disease, they will have kidney problem. Similarly, if they have metabolic problems like diabetes, they will have kidney problem. Kidney is the last place where body's excretion happens. So kidney and liver will get affected by anything we ingest, whether it's the water, any type of medication, food. So kidney disease, more specifically, chronic kidney disease, is an outcome of many other medical problems. I mentioned to you 37 million patients in the US suffer from chronic kidney disease. Last stage of chronic kidney disease, which is also called end-stage kidney disease, has roughly 500,000 patients. And of those 500,000 patients, roughly 400,000 or 80% of patients need something to manage their phosphate control. In the United States, the lowering of phosphate currently is being managed by approved drugs, and these approved drugs sell for roughly $1.25 billion every year in the US. So the point is that the problem we are addressing is a pretty big unmet need and is a really big market opportunity. Let me walk you through and give you a little bit of a background. Why do we care about hyperphosphatemia? Phosphate is not a trivial biochemical abnormality in the body. Every 1 milligram per deciliter increase in serum phosphate increases the mortality and morbidity. Mortality is shown here on the left side of the graph here, but morbidity, which is hospitalization and risk because of cardiovascular problem, is also very important. With 1 milligram per deciliter increase, as you can see, the moment the serum phosphate level goes above 5, it increases the cardiovascular risk by 10%, going on to 15% and 25% and so on. The question then becomes, how does phosphate cause the problem? Phosphate in the serum combines with calcium and causes deposition in the blood vessel that causes coronary artery disease. Someone who has a normal kidney function doesn't have to worry about phosphate because if we have a normal kidney, we can excrete phosphate from our kidneys and it comes out in urine. But patients who are on dialysis, the dialysis machine cannot filter up the phosphate, and the phosphate therefore continues to build up. As a reminder, patients who are on dialysis, they do not make urine, so there is nowhere phosphate for the phosphate to go. So this is the problem. This is what we are addressing it. And as you see in this graph, this is not a problem that has been addressed in the past. And it's interesting, and it's something worth investigating further because there are other approved drugs. This is not a disease condition where nothing has ever been approved. There are approved medications. But if you look at these two graphs in these two colors, dark purple as well as a lighter purple color, what you find if you look at a more stringent criteria, which is 4.5 milligram per deciliter, target serum phosphate level, roughly 75% of US population currently does not have adequate serum phosphate control. If you take a higher number, which is 5.5 milligram per deciliter, that number goes down, but it's still 44% of US population does not have adequate phosphate control. And we are talking about CKD patients who are on dialysis. So the question becomes why? If you have approved drug, why is it that it is so hard to manage the phosphate control? And the answer lies in this slide. The top graph, the bar chart shows you what is the problem. On an average, these patients are taking 20 to 30 pills per day. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not talking about somebody taking 20 to 30 pills for a day, for a week, or a month. We are talking about these patients to take 20 to 30 pills per day for rest of their life. Why? Because as I started by saying to you that chronic kidney disease happens to patients who have otherwise diabetes, hypertension, coronary artery disease. So they have other problems that they have to take medications for. But more importantly, 50% of their pill burden, 50% of all the medications they are taking, they come because of the treatment of hyperphosphatemia. And that becomes a big problem. If you look at the graph below that, the bar chart below that, we did a market research and we asked the practicing nephrologists in the United States, 100 of them. The one question we asked them, what was the number one, the biggest problem in treatment of hyperphosphatemia? An unaided question, which means that we didn't give them any prompt. This was an open-ended question. The number one problem that 60% of these nephrologists pointed out is pill burden. And to give you more context around it, to think about this, if you have ever taken care of any of your loved one, a family member, if you have grandma, grandpa, mother, father, or any family member, you realize that these patients have to take 30 pills a day. Imagine for a second, 10 pills with each meal. It becomes a real big problem. Our drug, oxylanthanum carbonate, solves that problem by threefold. It is highly potent. It is a drug that can be given in a small pill that reduces the pill burden, and we'll show you more specifically what I mean. But more importantly, our pill can be swallowed. The size of the pill is small enough that the starting dose for OLC is 500 milligrams 3 times a day. And the pill size is a small size like baby aspirin. So that alone makes a huge difference for these patients. OLC is a patented drug. We have multiple composition of matter patents and the patents globally, not just in the US. We have partnerships outside US, but in the United States, we have roughly 35 issued and granted patent. And these patents allow us patent protection till 2031 with the patent term extension, which is what you get for the extension for the time that you spend in running clinical trials. That patent term becomes 2035. So there is a huge, robust patent protection in a body of evidence that allows us to be able to cover our drug. I talked a little bit about the pill burden. If you look at this slide here, the drug that you see in purple is our drug, which is not approved. It's an investigational drug, but the rest of the drugs are approved. And what you find that the top two pills that you see there, Renvela, which is a market leader that sells for more than 50% of the market share. On an average, patients start with 6 pills per day. That's the starting dose. But many of these patients are taking 12 pills, and many more that do not get coverage with 12 pills, they're taking 15 or even 18 pills. This is per day treatment. Similarly, you see Foslo, which is on the right of the top corner. It's given, again, a starting dose of 6 tablets per day, 6 pills per day. But again, the patients end up in taking 12 pills or even higher. The bottom two that you see, Fosrenol and Velphoro, you would say, well, that's a smaller number of pills, and that will be correct. The problem with these smaller number of pills is that these are large size pills, which you see for yourself here. But then you're also required to chew the pills. These pills cannot be swallowed. In fact, for Fosrenol, it has a warning that do not swallow tablet whole, because if patient swallows the pill as a whole, first of all, it's difficult to swallow, but let's just say you decided to swallow it, somehow it goes down into your gut. These pills, if they're not swallowed, they're not chewed, they will not get absorbed. So to summarize what I said earlier, there are three sets of problems. One, there's a large number of pills that patients have to take. And let's say if they don't take large number of pills, then the second problem is there is smaller number of pills, but these are large size pills. So if the pill number is smaller, they're large size pills. That's number two. And the third is that large size pills have to be chewed. If you compare all of that, you look at the purple slide here. On the purple color, you have our pill, which is, as I mentioned, the starting dose is 500 milligram 3 times a day. They can go as high as 1,000 milligram 3 times a day, but these pills can be swallowed. The sheer size of the pill makes patients feel that they can take the pill, and that alone is half of the battle. I'll share with you some of the clinical data, walk you through a little bit of commercial background, and as we discussed earlier, I'll give you some color on the second drug and then focus on corporate rest of the corporate presentation. So we have run 2 clinical trials prior to running this third clinical trial. In total, we have run 3 clinical trials, but this last clinical trial was a clinical trial in patients. Prior 2 clinical trials were healthy volunteer clinical trials. They were focused on looking for safety tolerability. And the second trial was focused on looking at comparability with the existing drug called fostrenol. Our drug is new chemical entity, which is what is described as a patent protection. But our drug is based out of lanthanum, and the comparator drug is a drug which I will show you here on the slide right below. Our drug, oxylanthanum carbonate, is a drug called fostrenol. Fostrenol is based out of lanthanum as well. And we made the case with the FDA that we are similar to the approved drug that was fostrenol in 2004, and FDA agreed with us. And through a couple of clinical trials, as well as multiple preclinical research studies that we had to do, we are now aligned with FDA, and therefore we have filed a regulatory drug approval under 505(b)(2) pathway. So the last clinical trial that we ran, which was comparing our drug with historical data from fostrenol, was to see how our drug does when it is given to patients. When we gave our drug to patients, the total discontinuation rate, which is that for any cause, if patient was taking our drug, they had to be discontinued, was 5.8%, or if you go more higher level, is 6%. Fostrenol discontinuation rate is 14%. This is, again, historical data. It was not a head-to-head comparative study. The other 2 adverse events that we saw with our drug, we saw diarrhea of 9% and vomiting of 6%. And that is to be expected. And you say, how do I make sense of these numbers? And I'll show you the slide, next slide, to give you a background about how these adverse events are for the rest of the drug. So this slide compares all existing drugs that are currently approved for treatment of hyperphosphatemia. What you will see, and I'll point your attention to 2 drugs. One is Renvela. The reason is that Renvela is most commonly prescribed drug. And if you look at the adverse event profile of Renvela, you see vomiting of 22%, nausea of 20%, and you can go through the list. What you see compared to Renvela, fostrenol, which is our drug is based out of, has a lot lower adverse event profile. And frankly, if you compare to fostrenol to any other drugs, you see it is one of the lowest adverse event profile. Our drug improves upon fostrenol. And again, this is a smaller patient clinical trial data and it's non-comparator data, meaning it was not run head-to-head. But even so, when you see that clinical data in a small subset of clinical trial, we see our drug does even better than fostrenol. So this gives us a very good comfort, both in terms of ability to get through the approval process, but also an ability to be able to tell physicians as well as patients that drug is well tolerated. Interestingly and importantly, this is something we saw surprisingly, that when we ran our clinical trial, prior to starting a clinical trial, patient could be on any drug, meaning they could be on any drug that their physician thought were appropriate for their treatment, except fostrenol. We didn't want a patient to be on fostamatinib because the lanthanum, we didn't want to have any sensitivity for lanthanum that would skew our clinical trial data. But these patients were treated by the nephrologists throughout the US. We enrolled, target was 60 patients, but we enrolled 86 patients for this clinical trial. So when they were given whatever their physician thought was appropriate treatment at the tolerable dose that patient could take, the best their physicians could do was to be able to control 60% of patient to their serum phosphate level of target serum phosphate level of 5.5 milligram per deciliter. In other words, 40% of patients, which you see in the green color here, were not being able to control with existing treatment. On 6 weeks of a treatment, which is 6 weeks of titration, that number from 60 went to 90, which is incredibly impressive to us and to the physicians and the key opinion leaders we talked to. The 6-week treatment was again in a controlled environment, meaning the patients were given the drug in the clinical trial, but the movement from 60 to 90% is impressive, gives us a high degree of confidence that we launch a drug, we can solve many patients' problem. The second part was that, as I said to you earlier, that the drug's starting dose is 500 milligram, 3 times a day. Prior to running this trial, we anticipated the majority of patients would need more than 500 milligram 3 times a day. But what we realized in the clinical trial, that 69% of patients were being able to manage with 500 milligram TID, which again gives us a confidence that for majority of patients, this is what you will see the pill burden. There were some patients who needed more than one tablet, and if they needed a 3,000 milligram total lanthanum, then they got 2 of these tablets with each meal. But you see there is a variability, and the variability relies or comes from the fact that patients have high phosphate level based on their diet. More importantly, when patients were asked this question about their preference, majority of patients, no matter how you ask it, and of course it's intuitive when looking at the pill size, the majority of patients said they've given a chance, they would take this drug over any existing treatment. And that gives us a comfort and confidence to be able to launch the drug with potential best-in-class profile in a pretty big unmet need and a big commercial opportunity. Talking about commercialization just for a minute, we have been working on providing this information out to physicians, practicing physicians, as well as key opinion leaders who are the people who have been working on this particular treatment paradigm for last decades, 2 decades or more. And what we find every time we talk to physician, we do ad boards, advisory board, we provide the clinical trial data to physician. The commonest feedback we get from physician that it is no-brainer how quickly you can provide the drug. Our patients want to get on the drug. And we have been working on getting scientific papers publications. We have many, many papers published. So the idea is that we not only provide through ad board, but we also provide the scientific literature that provides a background and validation in peer-reviewed journal that this drug actually can solve patients' problem. Many companies find it challenging to launch a drug in the US market, and we would be no different. The one part here is that you see it is possible that in this market, by having a small number of sales reps, you can launch the drug. And that comes from the fact that phosphate binders are prescribed by a very small subset of physicians. In the US, there are 6,000 to 7,000 nephrologists. There are a few other healthcare professionals, for example, physician assistants and nurse practitioners. That increases the size. But the top 5 decile, that's 50% of the market, that is physicians who prescribe these drugs, that comes out to be only 2,100 physicians. And as you can imagine, by having a small sales force, and again, that sales force does not have to be dispersed equally throughout the US. This particular graph, this particular map actually gives you the more concentration about where these patients are. Where the patients are, that's where the physicians are, that's where the dialysis clinics are. And we can address top 5 decile of 2,100 physicians with small sales force. The goal is not to talk about a specific sales force size. We will provide that update in coming months. But the point here we wanted to make is that it's possible for us to be able to address that market opportunity, and we plan to launch it on our own. We talked about the patent protection, so I won't belabor it here, but we have a solid patent protection that gives us a coverage till 2035. Just talking very briefly, I started by saying we're a small, mighty team. On a corporate side, the person who's leading the launch of this drug is somebody who has launched 2 drugs in this class before. Dr. Masek was one who launched Renvela for Genzyme way back in time and grew Renvela to be over $1 billion in sales. We have a team member, Pramod and Guru. They have worked together at a prior company and had back-to-back 3 new drug applications and approval year after year, which is a rare feat even in a biopharma company. Doesn't matter the size, and you can not find such a small team being able to execute this well. On a scientific advisory board, we have some of the world's leading nephrologists, people who have been in this space for quite some time. Dr. Glenn Chertow has been previously the chief of division of nephrology at Stanford University. Dr. Miles Wolf is chair of medicine at Weill Cornell Medical Center. And Dr. Pergola has run multiple clinical trials in last 2 decades in nephrology. Almost any drug that has been on the market has gone through clinical trial where he was involved. And Dr. Ravi Mehta is one of the leading world experts in acute kidney injury. We are supported by some of the very well-known names in healthcare. I won't belabor this slide here, but we have been backed by some of the very well-known names. These are dedicated healthcare specialists who understand the unmet need, market opportunity, also what a drug can do for patients as well as for investors. So to summarize, we have a late-stage clinical development program with a potential approval date for mid-next year. We are backed by a drug that is a potential best-in-class, both efficacy as well as safety. We provided that information. We remain small, nimble, focused, and that's how we want to develop our team. We are looking forward to launching a drug mid-next year. We have a second drug that Robert initially talked about. It is a drug for potential acute kidney injury as well as chronic kidney disease. Uni494 has completed phase 1 clinical trial in the UK. Our goal is to take the drug and discuss with the FDA the regulatory path forward. Phase 1/2 program in the US will provide more data as we have discussion with the FDA. We are backed by a dedicated healthcare investor team, and we are looking forward to providing multiple milestones in coming months. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity. And if there are any questions, please reach out to us at ir@unicycive.com. Thank you to Noble Capital, and Robert, thank you for hosting me.
Thank you for appearing, and thank you for this presentation. This has been very interesting. One of the points that you mentioned, Dr. Gupta, was that the dosing for OLC allows the patients to be better compliant and take their full dosing. That leads to better phosphate levels, and that increased compliance leads to better outcomes. You had mentioned that one of the consequences of high phosphate levels were cardiovascular events. So is there any data, or is it too early to predict whether this better compliance and maintaining patients in their target levels is going to lead to better outcomes in terms of reduction in cardiovascular events and hospitalizations, which might save costs for the healthcare system?
Absolutely, Robert. And I think this is a fundamental principle that we have always focused on, that we want to be, people say, force for good. Robert, the point you made out that higher phosphate, serum phosphate level are absolutely directly correlated with more risk of hospitalization, more risk of cardiovascular risk. And in the world we live in, we are all trying to focus on better outcome for patients, decreasing the cost for care. So I do think that if our patients are better controlled in serum phosphate level, because our drug helps them to take the pills as they could take, that will lower their serum phosphate level. Therefore, it decreases all the downstream consequences. So decreasing in cardiovascular risk, decreasing hospitalization. And we are working with, as we go out there, we are focused on creating more outcomes-based data. And I can't wait for the drug to be on the market and be able to generate that data. But there is generally speaking, Robert, there are lots of peer-reviewed literature out there showing that high phosphate level. The slide I was showing you, this is already peer-reviewed publication that shows that this higher the serum concentration of phosphate, the more the adverse events that patients face. Definitely, as you go much, much higher, like 10 milligram or so per deciliter serum phosphate level, there is a huge challenge for these patients. So we believe we could be the solution for lowering the cost for healthcare, as well as lowering the complications that patients suffer.
Yeah, patients prefer it, they do better, and it reduces cost.
Yeah.
Are there any milestones ahead with the FDA that you can point out or reiterate?
We have been working with FDA. FDA, as a general process, they will have a what FDA calls its IR information request, where they will ask specific information to clarify. So there's an ongoing dialogue with the agency. We haven't seen anything that we would be surprised with, and we continue to work with the agency. Our goal is to work with them, provide them the full dossier, that any question they have, we provide the answers to those questions as quickly as possible. And again, the goal is to get the approval June 28, 2025 or earlier.
Okay, great. So that's the PDUFA date.
That's the PDUFA date, right?
Great. Well, I will be looking forward to following all of the developments with OLC and wish you the best. Thank you for appearing with us today.
Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you, Noble Capital, for hosting me. Again, appreciate your interest.
With more than 6,000 small and micro cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then ChannelCheck truly is your trade. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series luncheons, and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Micro Cap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since ChannelCheck is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why ChannelCheck is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.